Someone pass me. Oh, I'll let them. What? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So, Canto 2. Cosmic Manifestation, Chapter 2, The Lord in the Heart, Text 17. Everybody, please repeat after me. Na Yatra Kalo
Nimisham Paraha Prabhu Kuto Nu Deva Jagatam Ya Ishire Na Yatra Sattvam Na Rajas Tamas Cha Na Vai Vikaro Na Mahan Pradhanam
Nayatra Kalo Nimisham Para Prabhu.
Nayatra Kalo Nimisham Para Prabhu
Kuto na Deva Jagatam Ya Ishare.
Kuto na Devo Jagatam Ya
Nayatra yatra sattvam narajastamascha
न यत्र सत्त्वं न रजस्तमश्च न वै विकारो न महान् प्रधानम्
na yatra para prabhu
न यत्र कालो निमिषां परप्रभुः
kuto nudeva jagatam yat ishare
देवा जगतामीश्वरे
na yatra sattvam narajastamascha
न यत्र सत्त्वं न रजस्तमश्च
nivai vikaro namahan pradhanam
न वै विकारो न महान् प्रधानम्
na yatra kala nimisham para prabhu
न यत्र कालो निमिषां परप्रभुः
kuto nudeva jagatam yat ishare
कूतो न देवाजगताम्य ईश्वरे
na yatra sattvam narajastamascha
न यत्र सत्त्वं न रजस्तमश्च
navai vikaro namahan pradhanam
न वै विकारो न महान् प्रधानम् न यत्र कालो निमिषं परप्रभुः कूतो न देवा जगताम्य ईश्वरे न यत्र सत्त्वं न रजस्तमश्च न वै विकारो न महान् प्रधानम् न यत्र कालो निमिषां परप्रभुः कूतो न देवा जगताम्य ईश्वरे न यत्र सत्त्वं न रजस्तमश्च न वै विकारो न महान् प्रधानम्
na not yatra
यत्र
wherein
wherein
kalaha
कलह
destructive time
destructive
animisham
animisham
of the heavenly demigods
of the heavenly demigods
para
superior
superior prabhu
Prabhu
controller
control
kutaha
Kutaha
where is there
where is there
nu
no
certainly
certain
devaha
Devaha
the demigods
the demigods
jagatam the
Jagatam
mundane creatures
the mundane creatures
ye
Ye
those
those
ishare
Ishire
rules
rules
na
no
not
not
yatra
Yatra
therein
there
sattvam
Sattvam
mundane goodness
mundane goodness
na
Na
nor rajaha
Rajaha
mundane passion
mundane passion
tamaha
Tamaha
mundane ignorance
mundane ignorance
cha
Cha
also
also
na
Na
nor vai
Vai
certainly
Certainly
vikaraha
Araha
transformation
transformation
na
Na
nor mahan the material causal ocean pradhanam
Pradhanam
material nature. Translation, report of Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. In that transcendental state of Labdopashanti, there is no supremacy of devastating time, which controls even the celestial demigods who are empowered to rule over mundane creatures. And what to speak of the demigods themselves? Nor is there the mode of material goodness, nor passion, nor ignorance, nor even the false ego, nor the material causal ocean, nor the material nature. Purport. Devastating time, which controls even the celestial demigods by its manifestation of past, present, and future, does not act on the transcendental plane. The influence of time is exhibited by the symptoms of birth, death, old age, and disease. And these four principles of material conditions are present everywhere in any part of the material cosmos up to the planet Brahmaloka, where the duration of life of the inhabitants appears to us to be fabulous. Insurmountable time even brings about the death of Brahma, so what to speak of the other demigods like Indra, Chandra, Surya, Vayu, and Varuna. The astronomical influence directed by the different demigods over mundane creatures is also conspicuous by its absence. In material existence, the living entities are afraid of satanic influence, but for a devotee on the transcendental plane, there's no such fear at all. Living entities change their material bodies in different shapes and forms under the influence of the different modes of material nature. But in the transcendental state, the devotee is gunatita, or above the material modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Thus, the false ego of "I am the Lord of all I survey" does not arise there. In the material world, the false ego of the living being trying to lord it over the material nature is something like the moths falling in a blazing fire. The moth is captivated by the glaring beauty of the fire, and when he comes to enjoy it, the blazing fire consumes him. In the transcendental state, the living being is pure in his consciousness, and as such, he has no false ego to lord it over the material nature. Rather, his pure consciousness directs him to surrender unto the Supreme Lord, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 7:19, Vasudeva Sarvamiti Mahatma Suduravaha. All this indicates that in the transcendental there is neither material creation nor the causal ocean for material nature. The above-mentioned state of affairs is factual on the transcendental plane, but is factually revealed in a transcendentalist knowledge of the advanced state of pure consciousness. Such transcendentalists are of two types, namely the impersonalists and the devotees. For the impersonalists, the ultimate goal or destination is the Brahmajyoti of the spiritual sky. But for the devotees, the ultimate goal is the Vaikuntha planets. The devotees experience the above-mentioned state of affairs by attainment of spiritual forms for activity in the transcendental love and service of the Lord. But the impersonalist, because of his neglect and association with the Lord, does not develop a spiritual body for spiritual activity, but remains a spiritual spark only merged in the effulgent spiritual rays of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord is the full-fledged form of eternity, bliss, and knowledge, but the formless Brahmajyoti is simply eternity and knowledge. The Vaikuntha planets are also forms of eternally bliss and knowledge, and therefore the devotees of the Lord who are admitted into the abode of the Lord also get bodies of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. As such, there is no difference between one and another. The Lord's abode, name, fame, entourage, etc. are of the same transcendental quality. And how this transcendental quality differs from the material world is explained herewith in this verse. In the Bhagavad Gita, three principal subjects have been explained by Lord Sri Krishna, namely Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. But one can reach the Vaikuntha planets by practice of Bhakti Yoga only. The other two are incompetent in helping one reach the Vaikuntha lokas, although they can, however, conveniently take one to the effulgent Brahmajyoti as described above. Omikyanitavadandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurlanaditam Nena Tisma Shri Guruve Namaha Mukam Karidvachalam Pangam Langaite Giyam Yakritamaham Bande Shri Gurandiritanam Manchakapudipishcha Kripa Sindhu Bevicha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Translation once again. In that transcendental state of Labdha Pashanti, there is no supremacy of devastating time which controls even the celestial demigods who are empowered to rule over mundane creatures. And what to speak of the demigods themselves? Nor is there the mode of material goodness, nor passion, nor ignorance, nor even the fall, nor the material causal ocean, nor the material nature. So, so the principle, which Srila Prabhupada quote often, this time and tide wait for no one, that time is yeah, it's going and going and going, and it doesn't stop for anyone. Just as the tide of the ocean doesn't stop for anyone. You could go to the ocean and tell the tide, okay, stop, but it's not going to stop. You could look at that clock all day and say, stop, stop, stop. Of course, you could take the battery out and it'll stop. But the effects of time, there's a past, there's a present, and there's a future. So that we can't get away from. It is part of material existence. And in the spiritual world, you'd say the spiritual world operates on different principles. There's said to be no past or no present or future, but just the present. Of course, there are past times, but this is referring to Krishna's pleasure activities in the spiritual world with the devotees. And of course, there's the sun rising, the sun setting in the spiritual world, and the moon and so on. But this is all for pastime's sake. It doesn't have the same effects as they do here in material existence. And what are those effects? Namely, old age, which no one likes. Old age, birth, death, old age, and disease. Those particular, or those four problems are not, they don't exist in the spiritual world. They exist here in material existence. Of course, death, people, they see that as a problem. I mean, sometimes the scientists, they say, okay, we'll solve this problem of death. There was some article that said, okay, there may be possibility of us solving the problem of death, but then the next problem comes. And you know what that is? Does anyone know what that is? What they thought the next problem was? Maybe you could guess. No, it's not one of these birth, death, old age, and disease. The scientists are saying, okay, we may be able to solve the problem of death, but then there comes the next problem. Feeding everybody?
Overpopulation.
Well, yeah, that'd be interesting, because if you keep on birth, and then nobody's dying, then, feeding people, boredom. Because if you're able to stop death, right? Okay, you're here in this material world, you stop death. So you're eternally living in America or wherever. But, I mean, if you're living here eternally, I mean, how many places can you go? How many places? Things could get boring. So that they were saying that was the next problem, boredom. Of course, Srila Prabhupada, he never liked these claims of the scientists, and he would say, post-dated check, that you're promising something, but why should I accept that? It's a post-dated check. So yeah, the time and tide wait for no one, and therefore the idea is that we should try to utilize our time in the best possible way. And what is that best possible way?
Devotional service.
Devotional. What was that?
No, devotional service.
Yeah, devotional service. So we should hear and chant. We should spend we should utilize the 24 hours of our day in hearing and chanting about the name, the form, the qualities, the pastimes of Krishna. Yeah, we should utilize our time in that way. And the idea is that developing this remembrance of Krishna, the idea is to remember Krishna at the time of our death, and that's considered success. Anta Narayana Smritihi, that if we remember Krishna, then that is our success, stated all over the Vedic literature. But wherever our affection goes, that's where our attention goes. So we have to develop actually real affection, not just affection, but love for Krishna, and then our attention will go there, or else it won't go there. There was one case of a devotee who, he was driving and he stopped on a railroad track, and there was a train coming, and the train wasn't stopping. So he was thinking, okay, I'm going to die. So he was thinking of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. He was thinking of Krishna, and then right before the train hit, he thought, oh, what will happen to my wife? And then the train hit. Of course, he lived to tell the story, but he was remembering that, how he was remembering Krishna, and then right at that moment when that train hit, he thought, well, what will happen to my wife? So we have to be careful that we don't, that we really cultivate this remembrance of Krishna, and in times of difficulty, we call out to Krishna. I remember one devotee, he said he was with, he said he was with one devotee, and they're driving, and there was some danger. And this devotee, he yelled out, Jesus Christ, right? Which is good, you know, it's good. But you think the natural thing would be Hare Krishna or something. So we have to be careful, and that we should very carefully cultivate our remembrance of Krishna, not anyone else. And the effects of time, we cannot escape them. And eventually, okay, there's birth, all right, well, we already went through that. There's, usually it comes old age, and then disease, and then death, or sometimes disease, old age. So, over time, these things develop, and culminating in death. There was one particular case of a person, he heard that he had that Yamaraj was coming for him. And Yamaraj, so he had an appointment with Yamaraj. So this person was an artist, he was a sculptor. So he figured, okay, let me try to get out of this appointment. Let me try to escape this appointment. So what he did is he filled up this room with all types of sculptures of people, this or whatever. And then what he did is he posed as like a statue, and he was thinking, okay, Yamaraj, he won't notice, so he's just posing. So then Yamaraj came, and he was, of course, very intelligent, but he was looking around at all these sculptures, one by one, and he noticed this person, posing. And then Yamaraj, he said, said, "Oh, these whoever did these these are just terrible." And he was criticizing the different statues. And then the fellow that was posing, he said, "Hey, what do you mean? You know, I'm the one who did that." And then he said, "Okay, well, come with me." His false ego. And this is what Srila Prabhupada's mentioning here about the false ego. It is when one enters material existence, they get a false ego, and the false ego business is to facilitate our forgetfulness of Krishna and to facilitate our illusions. I am this body, and everything in relation to this body is mine. I am the Lord of all I survey. So these are the hallucinations of the false ego in material existence. And practically it's like taking the position of God, and sometimes people wonder, they say, well, that seems very harsh, or is it really true that people are wanting to take the position of God? Because if you go out on the street, you go to right here to the university, and you could go around with a microphone and video people and say, "Do you want to be God?" Most people will say, no, I don't want to be God, or God's dad, I don't believe in God, or who's God, or people who do believe in God, they say, no, I don't want to be God. Of course not. Most people will say that. Now you go to a Mayavadi you go to a place where there's a lot of impersonalists or Mayavadis, they say, yeah, I want to be God, or I am God. But generally people don't think like that. But if we analyze people's general behavior, like what is some of the characteristics, Bhoktaram Yagatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram, that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, he's the proprietor, he's the controller. So in other words, people want to have those positions, those particular qualities, grossly or subtly. So to surrender to Krishna means to give all that up, to renounce one's false ego and all the conceptions that accompany it, and to surrender and understand that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer and supreme friend and proprietor. So does anybody have any questions on this verse or purport?
Just a comment that
Yeah.
what you were saying is like philosophical theism, psychological atheism, somebody was saying. Like
Yeah.
that philosophically we say, yes, I'm not, but psychologically you are acting like as if you are the enjoyer. But
Yeah.
philosophically you say, yeah, God is the enjoyer. But
Yeah. Yeah, good point. Philosophical theism, psychological atheism. Okay?
somebody was saying.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point. Any other questions or comments?
Prabhu, how do we know that there is no effect of
How
time?
do we know what we know?
How do we know there is no effect of time in the spiritual world? Right? Like now you said scientists are trying to fix the issue of death, and Prabhupada says it's not there, it's a post-dated check. Why do we accept? So here, how do we know that there is no effect of time in the spiritual world? And
Well-
there's only time and effect only, like even if the Brahmaloka. I'm just asking.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it's a matter of who we accept as authority. People, they accept all different types of people or sources as authority, as authorities. So in Krishna consciousness, we also accept authority, and that our senses we are limited as humans. Our senses are imperfect, Okay, we don't know what's going on the other side of this wall. For sure, we don't know. We can speculate, but we don't know. Or you look up at the sun and it looks like a small little globe, but it's not small at all. Or we make mistakes. Prabhupada gives an example of. Remember who he gives example of?
A rope and a snake.
He gives example of a person who committed a mistake. Sri Upanishad of the introduction. He says Mahatma Gandhi. He says that people were telling him, don't go to this meeting. There's going to be trouble. They told him that. And he went to the meeting and he was assassinated. It was a mistake. So imperfect sense is committing the tendency to become illusioned. So what's the other one? The tendency to cheat. That's a big one. One time Srila Prabhupada was, what does it mean to cheat? It means to say that you're teaching something, but you actually don't know what you're teaching. You don't. You literally don't know. Like, there's an example, Srila Prabhupada was in a room and he was with one devotee there, Srila Damodar. And then one professor walked into the room. He's a professor of Hinduism. And then Srila Prabhupada asked him, what is Hinduism? And the professor said, I don't know. And then Prabhupada said, you're a professor of Hinduism and you don't know what Hinduism is? He said, yeah, I know. And then Prabhupada said to Srila Damodar, he said, Srila Damodar, what do you call somebody who teaches something but they don't know what they're teaching? What do you call that, Prabhupada? And then Srila Damodar said, he's a cheater, Prabhupada, he's a cheater. It's really intense, for the professor. So there's these flaws of the human soul. Then the question is, okay, well, how do we know? We have to accept some authority. Even these people who say they don't accept any authority, practically whatever they're thinking, whatever they're feeling, however they're operating, it's all. For example, the influence of Darwinism, the influence of Freudism, all of this is filtering in human society. How people think, what their philosophy is, what their goal of life is, capitalism, communism. There's all these things in people's mind, people brainwashed, right? It means they're accepting some authority. So, in terms of washing brain, Prabhupada said, because they would say, especially in the 60s and 70s, said, you're brainwashing people. Prabhupada said, well, if the brain is dirty, shouldn't it be washed? Right? So, but the point is, we also accept authority, but it's authority of the Vedas. And we accept the authority of Vedas as being perfect. And yeah, the Vedas explain these different points, that there's it explains the spiritual world, like the Brahma Samhita, for example, explains the nature of the spiritual world. And you could say, well, I don't believe that, or why should I accept that? So the idea is that as humans we have to, it's intelligent. If you're asking questions, who am I, what's the goal of life, and even just socially speaking, what philosophy is the best social system? So if you look at the Vedas, it's a super comprehensive body of knowledge that deals with everything. Okay, you have Ayurveda, right, health, you have Varnashram, how to organize a society, you have descriptions of God and the goal of life and the afterlife, how to live a happy life here, how to live a happy afterlife. Everything's there. So that's what Srila Prabhupada wanted to present to the world, that here is a body of knowledge and just investigate it and see. So, but anyways, yeah, so we accept it on the authority of the Vedas. That's the idea. Any other, yes?
Just a comment that what you were saying, that one time one scientist was claiming that life comes from chemicals, and then one devotee Prabhupada was saying, he said, if I supply you with the chemicals, can you produce life? And then the scientist said, I don't know. So then Prabhupada was saying, see, he's professing that life is coming from chemicals, but if you give, he say, I don't know. So then like that he's making a statement.
Yeah.
Like that he was saying.
Yeah. Yeah, good. Life comes from life. Yeah. Prabhupada would stress that all the time. There's a book about it, Life Comes from Life. I mean, Prabhupada was very interested in educating people, and he therefore he set up the Bhaktivedanta Institute for those who are scientifically inclined and so on. Yeah. Any other questions or comments?
For many people, this is not believable because there's no evidence that there is a realm where there is no effect of time, and so that's a major obstacle because they can't prove this is right? I mean, so those who are scientifically minded, to put faith in the authority of the Vedas is very difficult because they want to see everything by either experiment or through their inference or
Yeah.
and just to say that this is a blanket statement that there is a place where there is no influence of time is very difficult for somebody who's
Yeah, it's true. It's difficult for people to accept. I mean, religionists, they claim that the materialists have created havoc in the world. Means by the progressive march of materialist civilization, things have become chaotic. In other words, things have just become really messed up in the world. So that's the general claim, that's the criticism from religionists, that, okay, you say we should follow materialistic, hedonistic philosophy, but as Srila Prabhupada points out in the purport, it's like a moth going into the flame. What type of progress is it? So in other words, by following materialistic, hedonistic philosophy, it hasn't done any good for human society. That's what religionists claim. Now, if we want to consider ourselves religionists or spiritualists or on that side, as a society, it means International Society for Krishna Consciousness, we have to display to the world how that by following this philosophy, it is good for society. That if you practice bhakti yoga, then it will be good for you, it will be good for others, it will be good for everyone. It's the supreme good, devotional service, the highest good. And sometimes religions fail to do that because they do it mechanically or they don't follow the teachings properly or whatever it may be. So when the materialists say, oh yeah, okay, you guys are all just talking about like afterlife, no past, no present, no future, just eternity. Okay, fine, they may not be able to accept that right now. Okay, fine. But what about the existence now? They want to be happy, they want to be joyful, they want to be peaceful, they want to have a happy, crime-free society. Like Prabhupada went to Chicago, I think, where is it, Chicago? And he met with the chief police man there, and Prabhupada said, well, just give us a building and we'll hold kirtan and distribute prasadam and the crime will go down. Did the police officer agree? I mean, he might have agreed politely, but they didn't give the building. So people, they want that. So we could communicate with them on that level. So okay, it might be difficult for you to accept some afterlife idea, but what about now? And that by practicing Krishna consciousness, it will help in the present, peaceful, happy. We could say at least experiment with. That's a problem. They're willing to experiment with like anything else besides Krishna. Any other, philosophy, idea they're willing to experiment with Krishna. Some anti kind of Krishna going on. So we could try to encourage them on that level, and that might help them. Like Prabhupada was asked one time about one disciple was telling Srila Prabhupada, it's very difficult to accept this, okay, Lord Brahma on a swan carrier with 4 heads and so on. This is very difficult to accept. And then Srila Prabhupada said, do you like chanting Hare Krishna? And then the devotee said, yes, I do. And then Srila Prabhupada said, okay, that's right. You just continue chanting Hare Krishna and you put these ideas about Lord Brahma, the swan carrier, whatever, difficult ideas you have. You have difficult ideas that are hard to accept for you. You put them in the back of your mind and just continue chanting Hare Krishna. And then eventually everything will become more clear. So, of course, there's devotees writing papers and books. I mean, there's so many different ways to answer the question, but people writing books and seminars, scientific, to help those people. And many times you need if you're dealing with a scientific person, you need a scientific devotee to deal with them. That's why Prabhupada had the BI, so they could write, using their language. So it may be disservice actually to try to communicate with them in a non-scientific way. So, yeah. Any other?
You are saying that religionists are saying, see how much havoc the materialists have created.
Yeah.
But the materialists will say how much havoc religion has created by there are so many wars that happen in the name of religion, so many massacres that happen in the name of religion.
Well, we would say that this is so-called religious wars. There are religious wars like battlefield of Kurukshetra, for example. But then there's like so-called religious wars. It means that people, fanatics, means they're not really following the teachings of the scripture, but they're being fanatics, killing people. Or they're just, in the name of religion, they actually just want the people's land. Yeah, this is religious, but actually I just want your property, your land, your country. And if you look at the wars in the world created by different non-religious leaders, it far outweighs, even if you want to say religious versus non-religious, the non-religious wars far outweighs religious wars, statistically speaking, in terms of deaths. But even looking at the religious wars, a lot of those wars are on the basis of the bodily concept of life, fighting against religion to religion or whatever it may be. It's like based on, it's not pure, it's like Bhagavad Dharma type of principles they're operating on. Yeah. There's war because there's envy and hatred, and generally, unless there's a unique war where it's generally the wars are on the basis of hatred, envy, wanting other people's property. It's all mundane, and we would say that's not religious. That's mundane and material, and that's the real problem, right? Toxic consciousness, that's the real problem. And therefore Krishna consciousness can be seen to be the solution to the problems in the material world, because by toxic consciousness so many problems are created. Environmental, environmental, all the problems really.
Health, mental.
Yeah, psychological, environmental, wars, all of these things. So the solution is Krishna consciousness. How long does this usually?
So I have one more verse after this.
One more verse. So should we read the next verse?
Yeah.
Okay. There's the same devotee dressed the deities every day, or is it different devotees? Who dresses?
I think it's different for different.
Or specifically, who dresses Radha Vrindavan Natabar?
Gurudayal, right?
Yeah.
Gurudayal.
He dresses every day?
Weekdays.
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 Weekends, congregations.
Oh, congregation on the
On
weekends.
Sunday, on Sunday.
On Sunday. So he dresses every, 6 days a week. Okay, nice. All right, so we'll go to text 18. Padam padam Vaishnavam Atmanantitad
Param padam Vaishnavanamamanantika.
Yaneti Yatad. Is that the right? Is that the right? Is that the right meter I'm chanting? Yeah. Yaneti Yatad Utsi Shavaha Visjaduramyam Anan Sorida
Visijadorapyam ananya saurida.
Vido Paguyarha Padam Pade Pade.
Ido paguyara padam pade pade.
The transcendentalists desire to avoid everything godless, for they know that the supreme situation in which everything is related with the Supreme Lord Vishnu. Therefore, a pure devotee who is in absolute harmony with the Lord does not create perplexities, but worships the lotus feet of the Lord at every moment, taking them into his heart. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita, Muddama, my abode, is mentioned several times, and according to the version of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, there exists unlimited spiritual sky, wherein the planets are called Vaikunthas, or the abode of the Personality of Godhead. In that sky, which is far, far beyond the material sky and its sevenfold coverings, there is no need of the sun or the moon, nor is there a necessity of electricity for illumination, because the planets are self-illuminating and are more brilliant than the material suns. Period. Pure devotees of the Lord are absolutely in harmony with the personality of Godhead, or in other words, they always think of the Lord as their only dependable friend and well-wisher. They do not care for any mundane creature up to the status of Brahma, the Lord of the universe. Only they can definitely have a clear vision of the Vaikuntha planets. Such pure devotees, being perfectly directed by the Supreme Lord, do not create any artificial perplexity in the matter of transcendental understanding by wasting time in discussing what is Brahman and what is non-Brahman, or Maya. Nor do they falsely think of themselves as one with the Lord, or argue that there are no existence of the Lord separately. There is no existence of the Lord separately. Or that there is no God at all. Or that living beings are themselves God. Or that when God incarnates himself, he assumes a material body. Nor do they concern themselves with many obscure speculative theories, which are in actuality so many stumbling blocks on the path of transcendental understanding. Apart from the class of impersonalists or non-devotees, there are also classes who pose themselves as devotees of the Lord, that at heart maintain the idea of salvation, with becoming one with impersonal Brahman. They wrongly manufacture their own way of devotional service by open debauchery, and mislead others who are simpletons or debauchees like themselves. All these non-devotees and debauchees are, according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Duratmas, or crooked souls, and the jest of Mahatmas, or great souls. Such non-devotees and devotees are completely excluded from the list of transcendentalists by the presentation of this particular verse by Shukadeva Goswami. So the Vaikuntha planets are factually the supreme residential places called the Param Padam. The impersonal Brahmajyoti is also called the Param Padam, due to its being the rays of the Vaikuntha planets, as the sun rays are the rays of the sun. In the Bhagavad Gita 14:27, it is clearly said that the impersonal Brahmajyoti rests on the person of the Lord, and because everything rests on the Brahmajyoti directly and indirectly, everything is generated from the Lord. Everything rests on him, and after annihilation, everything is merged in him only. Therefore, nothing is independent of him. A pure devotee of the Lord no longer wastes valuable time in discriminating the Brahman from non-Brahman, because he knows perfectly well that the Lord Parabrahman, by his Brahman energy, is interwoven in everything, and thus everything is looked upon by a devotee as the property of the Lord. The devotee tries to engage everything in his service and does not create perplexities by falsely lording it over the creation of the Lord. He is so faithful that he engages himself as well as everything else in the transcendental love and service of the Lord. In everything, the devotee sees the Lord, and he sees everything in the Lord. The specific disturbance created by Duratma, or crooked soul, is due to his maintaining that the transcendental form of the Lord is something material. So transcendentalists, they avoid everything godless, and the present society, it's a godless civilization. It's a atheistic or godless civilization. It's the principle of material civilization. So as practitioners of Bhakti Yoga or Krishna consciousness, we want to avoid all godless things, which could become a bit of a challenge, because if you're living in godless society, how are you supposed to avoid godlessness? You drive down the street and there's or you drive down the highway and there's so many billboards and they're all godless billboards. It means they have nothing to do with God or the spirit soul or anything like that. It's very mundane. And that's the modern world, very mundane. So therefore, devotees, in order to remain God conscious or Krishna conscious and not become godless, they have to develop that spiritual strength. Therefore, every morning Srila Prabhupada stresses, rise early, chant Hare Krishna, attend Mangalarti, chant Hare Krishna, do so many things, perform deity worship, to have a morning program. And that morning program is said to be like the inoculation or the method which protects us from becoming contaminated by godlessness. And even though one is living in a godless society, if one has strict sadhana or spiritual practices, specifically in the morning, there's great stress is given in the morning practices, then one is able to remain Krishna conscious throughout the day. And as Srila Prabhupada said, the most important instruction of the spiritual master is to chant at least 16 rounds a day of the Hare Krishna mantra. And without doing that, he said it's practically impossible to remember Krishna. So we should take the proper measures to protect our consciousness from a godless civilization or godless society by practicing very seriously So Srila Prabhupada says in the purport, okay, in the Bhagavad Gita, my abode is mentioned several times. And according to the version of Krishna, there exists a limited spiritual sky, the Vaikuntha Lokas, far, far beyond the material sky, where there's no need of sun or moon or electricity, it's self-illuminated. And where devotees reside there peacefully, right, and happily engaged in Krishna's service. And it's always fresh and new and blissful, engaging in Krishna's service. It's not that when night falls and the gopis that go out to dance with Krishna, they're thinking, oh no, we have to go out again, I'm feeling tired, or I don't feel like going out. It's not like going to a 9-to-5 job that you don't like. It's not like some mundane chore that you don't like, taking whatever it is. But that is what they live for, that's their life, going out, for example. The gopis going out and dancing with Krishna. Or the cowherd boys, it's not that they think, okay, well, I don't really feel like it, I'm just going to stay back today. But they're excited, to say the least, to go out with Krishna. They can hardly sleep, right, thinking about it. So it's a place where the personalities there, they're always thinking of Krishna as their dependable friend and well-wisher. Also, Srila Prabhupada's mentioning that the devotee doesn't waste their time with so many different conceptions, so many different philosophies, so many different speculations. I mean, devotees may read other things. They say you could take, anyways, devotees may read other things for particular purposes. Maybe for the purpose of preaching, devotees may read different philosophies to have an understanding of them. Like Prabhupada, there's that book, Shamasundar Prabhu was interviewing Srila Prabhupada about different philosophies, and Prabhupada was answering them. So they may read certain books to become familiar with them. For example, we're in a Christian country. We're in a Christian country. America's a Christian country still. Europe is more of like an atheistic country. All the different countries in Europe, but America is a Christian country, and devotees may read. I mean, not neglecting the Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita or any other books like that, but gradually read that. And you can say, well, why? What's the purpose of that? Well, you familiarize yourself with the teachings of the people who, the vast majority of people living in this country. And sometimes they may ask you, Christians, you may meet Christians on book distribution, for example, and they may not like you distributing books, other books. They may ask you, have you read the Bible? And if you could say, yes, I have. And you could say, did you read the Bible? It's interesting because sometimes the Bible's said to be the most, anyways, it's a book that a lot of people like download onto their phones and read, or actually don't read, but although it's one of the most downloaded books, it's one of the most neglected books. Similarly, like Bhagavad Gita. Sometimes people, they keep Bhagavad Gita at their home, but they haven't really read it. It's like the definition of a classic book. Classic book means you have it on your shelf there, but you don't read it. It's a classic. course, we should read it. But becoming familiar, for example, with teachings of the Bible may help in such a place. Of course, it's not absolutely necessary, but it may help. Like I was distributing books we were in San Diego, and there was this man, this fellow from Middle East, I think from, where is it? Anyways, he read Arabic, so we're trying to distribute him an Arabic Bhagavad Gita. So he was a Christian, and he was really like not into what we had a book table in a touristy spot in San Diego, a lot of people. So then he said, "Have you read the Bible?" He asked, and he was like challenging us. I said, "Yes, I have." And then, because he was in a challenging mood, I kind of was being a little challenging with him. I said, "Have you read it?" And then he was a little quiet, and then we went on to the next topics, and then I was just telling him, "Hey, I'm baptized," because I actually was. I grew up in a Christian household, so that's like their initiation. They baptize you in the water and all that. So I said, "Yeah," I said, "I'm baptized, and I accept Jesus Christ," which is all true. I was baptized, and I do accept Jesus. Yeah. So anyways, I was going on like this, and there was another devotee talking to him, and eventually the guy got the book. He bought the Arabic Bhagavad Gita. So yeah, it may help. It's not absolutely necessary, but it may help to familiarize ourselves with certain books and certain teachings. But nonetheless, as Srila Prabhupada's stressing here, we don't want to waste our time unnecessarily with so many different books. Everything's in the Bhagavatam. Everything's in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Everything's within Srila Prabhupada's books. Whatever one needs is there. It's the postgraduate study of religion. And this Sahajism that Srila Prabhupada's pointed out in the purport, that there's people who wrongly manufacture their own way of devotional service, means they don't really follow scripture. Like Rupa Goswami says, Shruti Smriti Purana Adi, right? That if one neglects the scripture and just speculates their own way, they're creating simply a disturbance in society. So we don't have to manufacture everything. Everything's there within the scriptures. We just have to precisely follow. And part of that precisely following is, of course, following the four regulative principles, chanting at least 16 rounds. And this is the problem with the Sahajism, is that Sahaji, they take everything cheaply. They actually completely hijacked Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. 13 groups, deviant groups. It was completely covered. Bhaktivinoda Thakur resurrected Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. I mean, it was such in a lost state, he couldn't even find Chaitanya Charitamrita. Imagine that. He was in Bengal and he couldn't find Chaitanya Charitamrita. In India, he couldn't find Chaitanya Charitamrita. So he found it and then reestablished Vaishnavism, its proper glory. But the deviant groups, what's the basic principle? The principle is just chant Hare Krishna. You don't have to follow anything, right? no food restrictions, no moral, nothing. Just chant Hare Krishna. And that is usually what religion kind of degrades into. Just worship God and you could do whatever, it doesn't matter. It's just whatever's in your heart. Whatever garbage is in your heart. But that's not the process one has to follow. And it's the responsibility of the members of the society of ISKCON to follow very strictly and to keep that purity. Purity is the force. And to protect the movement from degrading into Sahajiism. Protect the community from degrading. Philosophical deviations, strange ideas that, yes, you could become Krishna conscious without following any principles. There's so many things that need to be protected. I'm sure Prabhupada was very concerned about that. Okay, so does anybody have any questions or comments in relation to this verse or purport or anything?
So one time I had a book table and one Christian lady came and she started praying. She says, I'm praying to Jesus that he shows you the right path. So they are thinking, everybody's thinking that their book, the Bible, is the best. Like the Muslims think the Quran is the best, just like we think Bhagavad Gita and Chaitanya.
Yeah, every religion thinks they're the best.
They are the best. So then it becomes sometimes very difficult to convince that, because they think this is how it is in the Bible and this is what. So.
Yeah, I mean, we would consider a lot of these people like fanatics or like sentimental. So again, if you talk with a lot of these people, they haven't read it. They just, they attend some classes, they get baptized, they believe, they grew up like that, they're conditioned. They haven't even read it, most of them. And also, when you start getting into it, I mean, even the leaders, it's like, how literal do they take it? A lot of the times they don't take it literal. My friend, now this isn't talking about all the priests, but it gives an idea of how you could say it could become a little strange. My friend, he has a devotee, he has a father, and his father was the main preacher at a church. Like, he's the main person. At churches, usually what happens is, it's not that you have a different speaker every Sunday. There's like, traditionally at a lot of churches, it's like you have one kind of acharya, one priest. He gives the sermons every week. He lives in a house near the church, he comes, he gives the sermons. So anyways, his father was that, he was running a church. And this devotee was talking with his father one day about angels, because in the Bible it talks about angels, how there's these personalities who look over people, help people, kind of like demigod figures in the sense. And so this devotee was saying, oh, we have something like that too, like angels. And then the devotee was saying, I mean, you accept that, right? Like it's stated in the Bible, you accept that there's existence of angels. And the father said, maybe, I don't know. Who knows? Who could know? I mean, he's a preacher, he's the main preacher of this church. And he's saying, oh, who knows? Maybe. Means he doesn't have faith in like literal faith. Like we take things very literal in the Bhagavatam. There are some cases, there's some analogies and so on. But we take things very literal. But it's becoming more and more common that religion and religious people do not take things literal. Just like Catholicism, for example. If you look it up, they don't take some points in the Bible literal. Like, for example, the creation. It says God created the earth in 7 days, or 6 days, and he rested the seventh day. And so on. There's a whole, in Adam and Eve, and there's a whole story, right? But they don't take that literal. That's just like gives an idea. So it's interesting, because you can look at scripture in a literal way, and you can look at scripture as just like signs and analogies and give some hint. And what to speak of the different conceptions? I mean, there was one very, very well-known preacher in America, like huge, thousands and thousands of followers, like super successful, so many books written, and like really big person in America, big guru. And they asked him about his conception of heaven or the afterlife. And he said something very surprising. Well, they asked him, they said, what will you do when you get to heaven? That was a question. And he said that, well, when I get to heaven, I'll serve God for 100 years. And then after that, I'll enjoy. It's interesting because he's saying that, okay, I'm going to serve God, right? Kind of put in my time. I have to put my time, serve God for 100 years only. And then after that, I'm going to enjoy the kingdom of God. Like you're on, like it's a vacation in Hawaii or something. Like enjoy the kingdom of God without God. And he said it was a public statement. It wasn't like he was hiding it. Like that's what he said. Very big preacher. But anyways, so we do, because we're in a Christian country, we do meet people, and a lot of the times, I mean, we just don't. It's just better to be respectful and polite and kind of move on, because a lot of these people are unfortunately like very fanatical or sentimental. But you can meet some intelligent people who are Christians, and it's not necessarily that they will take the Christian conscience, maybe, but at least they could have an open philosophical discussion and not be fanatical or sentimental. Srila Prabhupada was once asked, what happens to the Christians? One devotee asked him. And then Srila Prabhupada said, the Christians, the sincere Christians, what happened to the sincere Christians? He said, the sincere Christians, they joined the Hare Krishna movement. And he said, just like all of you, you're coming from Christian backgrounds. He was referring to his Western disciples in America. So some of them can become devotees. And of course, Prabhupada would tell in some cases that you just chant the names of God, you be vegetarian, follow Jesus. But it can be challenging. I mean, sometimes devotees say, you're a Christian, wonderful. That's very good. I mean, the world would be a lot better if there was people like you, more people like us, religious people. We're on the same side. And actually, Jesus Christ is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita in the purport, chapter 9 or something. Prabhupada mentions how he sacrificed his life. So you could show him, you could see, Jesus Christ is mentioned here. And I really appreciate what you're doing. And you'll love this book. And you kind of like, instead of, you meet a Christian and you're like, well, you're a Christian? Okay, well, I guess the deal's closed, like there's no chance, be kind of like positively, oh, yeah, sure, wonderful, you like this book. And sometimes, surprisingly enough, people who are really Christian, like really Christian, will buy the book. Like I was distributing books door to door one time, and I was distributing a book in it. And for a Christian person to accept a book that has Lord Vishnu on it, that's like, I know devotees really like the Science of Self-Realization cover. They really like that. And a lot of people like that in general. But from a Christian standpoint, that's like, it's hard to relate. They just can't relate, really. So I remember I was distributing a book and it had Vishnu on it. I don't know if it was the Science of Self-Realization, maybe another book. And she said she's a Christian, this and that. She said, yeah, usually I would never buy such a book, but she said, but I'll buy the book from you. She gave some money and took the book. All right, any other last? Are there some people watching or no?
Yeah.
Is it like Zoom,
Yeah,
like
it's
a
on
Skype thing?
No, ISKCON Columbus channel. We have
Okay,
YouTube.
but not Skype thing today.
They are all on Skype.
People
All
on Skype
people on
also
Skype
watching
join there.
YouTube.
Okay, are there any questions on Skype?
There was one comment.
Comment or question?
He said, somebody is saying, if God uses someone for our purification and we become bhakta, devotee after that, will Krishna protect the soul who is being sacrificed for my bhakti life? So,
Sacrificed? Protect the soul?
yeah, if somebody helps me become a devotee, will Krishna protect that soul who
Oh.
helped me become a devotee?
Yeah, they have credit. Krishna's very kind. He's the most kind, and he will take care of somebody who even turns to him once. Can't forget that person. Krishna's very merciful. That Brikasura pastime, I was just reading last night after that.
He didn't say that in the.
Huh?
We were discussing. I also read that.
Oh,
Yeah, that
and then Krishna didn't say that?
I read it in Krishna book. I didn't see it, but maybe the Bhagavatam.
Oh, Krishna didn't say, oh, I will.
Don't give such boons.
Oh, he didn't say that. Okay, well, there you go.
I may have missed, but I was skimming through it. And
Yeah. But I was looking in the fourth canto, Daksha, in Lord Shiva, the pastime, and it's being mentioned there that Shiva was just seeing the good of Rikasura. That's amazing how he was seeing the good. He's a very tamasic person. He was cutting his flesh and starting to cut his head. But Prabhupada mentions that a great personality just sees the good. And he was saying, Lord Shiva, he was seeing the good in this worshiper. For most people, they just, have a hard time seeing the good in such a person. So like with Krishna, if anybody does some service, Krishna magnifies it. So. All right, I think if the time's out, right?
yes.
All right. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Sri Balaram Prabhu ki jai.
Oh, Krishna.